It's the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. Honours even as the hunt for honours heats up in the meeting between the big two. We'll discuss, dissect and debate all of the fallout from the Etihad before turning our attentions to the Champions League ahead of the visit of Benfica. Plus, we'll bring you our team selector and match predictions too. To get into the heavyweight showdown then, we have our own stellar lineup. Liverpool correspondent, home and away, Paul Gorst, social sensation Delaney, and our resident red Dan Kay. Gents, I trust you're all well. And well, Gorsty, I take it that was a point gained in the end after what we saw in the first half at the Etihad.
Yeah, I think it was always going to be a point gained, really. Going to the Etihad and winning is something that not many teams do they? I think Crystal Palace have done it this season, and can't really think of too many other games in the last few seasons where City have been beaten at the Etihad. So, yeah, I think most people would have taken a point before kick-off, and obviously it means that it's kind of out of Liverpool's hands now. But just to kind of keep it rolling on for the final 7 games is enough at this point, I think, given the fact that Liverpool were 11 points, 12 points, 13, 14 behind at various points as recently as January. And I've seen a few people saying today, but I can't see City dropping points now. And to be fair, when can you see them dropping points? You know, you certainly don't see them dropping points to Crystal Palace, home or away, Southampton, maybe Tottenham, you can make a case for that one. But generally, everyone City play, you think they're going to win. So he could slip up against any one of the next 7 games. I don't expect them to fall away drastically, but all it takes is one little draw for Liverpool to fully capitalise, and then it's back in their hands, isn't it? So just to kind of be at this point, at this stage of the season, is enough, I'd suggest. But it was a thrilling game, wasn't it? Pulsating, absorbing, end-to-end at times. Liverpool really rattled in the first half, kind of thrown out of the stride. So, you know, Liverpool's so composed and sure in possession, aren't they, normally, and City completely kicked them out of the stride, and you don't really see Liverpool so flustered as they were. I was like, you know, say to be like Van Dijk in possession or Alisson would have hold of it, I'd be looking down at the Etihad tweeting about something that's just happened, and I'd look up and City would have the ball 30 yards from goal. It just seemed to be very unlike Liverpool, very uncharacteristic. But dug in, showed the resilience that they're kind of famous for. Came out in the second half, got themselves back into the game, and had a really good spell. But City were always going to find, you know, an extra gear at home, weren't they? But all in all, I think the 2 teams showed why they're the 2 best in the world at the moment, and crucially, the title race is still alive.
Yeah, most definitely. Kai, that was the thing for me watching first half in particular, was at times how rattled Liverpool looked, certainly defensively. Virgil van Dijk, I can't kind of remember him kind of being in a fluster in that regard. But as Gorsty said, they kind of dug in. And second half, I suppose easy to say in hindsight, but how poor they'd been in the first half, they surely weren't going to come out second half and serve up more of the same.
Yeah, that's the only good thing, isn't it? When you put in a performance as flustered and as poor as that from a Liverpool perspective, you know, we know the standards they can reach, and when you see them play like that in the first half, it's only going to go one way. So I think to go in, you know, still very much in the game at halftime, as halftime came at a very good time for Liverpool, and Klopp would have been, you know, we've heard the interviews from Trent and Jordan Henderson after the game saying about the messages that Klopp was getting over to them at halftime, and I think he would have been praying for that whistle to get his players in and, you know, regroup and go again for the second half, and it absolutely did that. You know, coming out and scoring a goal within 1 minute of the restart, couldn't have gone any better for Liverpool to really get a foothold on that second half, and arguably the better team in the second half certainly had chances to win it. I know City did as well, but a lot has been made of Liverpool's high line and the chances that City were able to get from that. You know, Guardiola's come out after the game and said that he actually took a bit of inspiration from Klopp and Liverpool in the way that they played. It's very rare you see City go so direct, and you know, I think that the team he picked with Sterling and Jesus, it was a real plan to expose Liverpool's high line, get runners in behind, and you know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago without VAR, that Sterling goal would have counted and City win the game. But all in all, the way the first half played out, the performance from Liverpool, City well on top, that Mahrez chance at the end, the fact that it was away and it's still only 1 point, it's definitely a better point for Liverpool in that regard. It keeps the title race still alive. If City win that 4 points, I think you need them to slip up in 2 games of the remaining 7, which is a big ask, but just 1 point now, they only need a draw. If Liverpool can win 7 from 7, then it's absolutely game on. So all in all, I think a good point for Liverpool.
Yeah, definitely. We've always been huge advocates of VAR here on the Blood Red channel. So, yeah, definitely that came to the fore. Dan, you were in the away end that was serenading Jurgen Klopp at the end of the game in particular. But going right back to the start of the game, far from ideal going behind inside 5 minutes. But give Liverpool their credits, I suppose, the first side this season to take something off City when they've opened the scoring in a game.
That's right. It's kind of more than a dozen matches, I think, maybe close to 20 matches when they've taken the lead. And obviously, they're so good at managing games, so good at kind of beating teams into submission. I think through a large part of this season, almost by reputation alone. And I think we all feared the worst when, City came flying out the traps. Alisson had to make a good save from Sterling early on. And then they got the break through De Bruyne with, second deflected goal he's got against Liverpool this season. And even though we got ourselves back level relatively quickly, as Gorst alluded to in his first answer there, the Liverpool just seemed rattled in the first half. I don't know exactly what was the problem, because this is a team that's played a lot of big football matches, not just this season, but over the last 4 or 5 years. And generally, they've been to pretty much every big cathedral in European football, withstood the pressure, withstood the intensity, and come through it. Now, arguably, they haven't played a team as good as Man City in any of these other. I think no one would dispute the fact that these are probably the best 2 teams in the world at the moment. So I think it was absolutely crucial to get in at 2-1. I think City went back in front, didn't they, maybe 7 to 10 minutes before the break, and we were all looking at each other going, "We've got to get in at 2-1. If it goes to 3-1, it's potentially a long, long road back." But I think what we saw after the interval, I think, shows the depth of character that that has been honed within this team, within this squad, for obviously a number of years now. And even obviously got themselves back into the game with a magnificent equalising goal within a minute of the start of the second half, and then had that kind of 10-15 minute spell when you felt for the first time we were actually really on top and really taking the game to City. And if that was the moment when Liverpool could have got the noses in front, that was probably it. And then when that didn't happen, I think a lesser Liverpool team, or even a Liverpool team of a year or two ago, as City began to reassert their authority, it took, I think, a fair degree of mental toughness and tactical nous, really, to appreciate that, against a team of City's quality, you have to accept the fact they are going to have a lot of the ball. And the way we play, the way they play, as Guy was saying, as Kai was saying, it's a very obvious tactic that they have, these balls in behind the channels. It's calculated risk, what Liverpool do. By pushing the fullbacks on so high, you have to accept the fact that other teams are going to get in against you at times. And that applies to far, far less effective football teams than Man City. So for me, one of the most encouraging things was, though, even after the game kind of leveled out in the second half and it became quite an even game, with maybe City slightly edging it, slightly having the better chances, you always felt Liverpool could score another goal. And obviously at that stage at 2-2, potentially a winning goal. And I think having that threat right from the start, because I'm pretty sure the Jotter goal was our first meaningful attack. Even if, I think you have to say City had the better chances, Liverpool always looked capable of scoring. And just having that little seed of doubt in City's mind, I think possibly just maybe stop them going full throttle and really going out for the win. So they might argue that a point for them is a better point because it keeps them a point in clear. Obviously, they remain in control of their own destiny as regards the title. But I think, given the way the match went, I think we can. From my point of view, it's a better point for Liverpool. And if I was a City fan, I would be slightly concerned that an opportunity was maybe missed yesterday to kill Liverpool off, particularly in that first half when we were at times all over the show. And even late in the second half when they were pushing and looking likely for a winner, they could have, as Kai said, 4 points for 7 games ago probably would kick us out the title race. They weren't able to do that, and hopefully that might just come back to haunt them.
Yeah, Pep Guardiola kind of said as much, didn't he, in his post-match press conference, Gorsty, how it was maybe a chance to kill off Liverpool that wasn't quite taken. I mean, we knew there was a ton of respect between Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola prior to this game. Both have reiterated that in the build-up to it, and I suppose we've seen that great rivalry play out with actually real respect, mutual respect between the two, and how they set it out. But what's the biggest compliment paid by Guardiola to Liverpool, Gorsty, in the way he set his team up, as Kai said, of playing those? City are so synonymous with short passing and incisive passing, but those long balls out from the back, Laporte and Stones kind of going into Matip and Van Dijk kind of mode, as it were, and pinging the ball forward to the wide forwards, to such like we see to Sadio Mane week in, week out. And it was a real effective tactic that certainly for Gabriel Jesus really worked. Yeah,
I don't necessarily think that that's Guardiola paying Liverpool a compliment. I think that's just a kind of tactical tweak that he thinks can work against Liverpool, and it did, to be fair, didn't it? You know, City, look at the Sterling chance early on that came from, was it Bernardo Silva putting in Walker down the side? Oh no, that was a different chance. That was one where Van Dijk had to clear inside the 6-yard box, but there was one very early on, wasn't it? Sterling should have taken. It's possibly a blueprint for other coaches to look at, actually, in terms of how they actually get at this Liverpool team, because before Sunday, Liverpool's defensive record was superb, wasn't it? I can't remember the exact stats off the top of my head now, but I know they haven't conceded too many since that game against Chelsea at the turn of the year, and that was a defence that was kind of patched up a little bit, wasn't it? No Alisson, no Andy Robertson. I think Canate played instead of Matip that day. So it's something that City might try and replicate at Wembley on Saturday. Obviously, bigger pitch, wider pitch. But Liverpool will have to come up with something themselves. I think, actually, what was quite surprising was Liverpool looked as though they could have scored more, particularly in the first half. As Dan says, they pretty much scored with the first attack of the game, the first meaningful forage forward. They've ended up equalising, and then Jotter had that chance, which almost came out of nothing, really, when was it Laporte who got back, and it was a superb challenge. But if he might have been a bit more decisive there, he could have got a shot off a bit earlier. It was the weird incident with Henderson, wasn't it, where it nearly kind of rolled over the line. So for all the kind of, particularly in the first half, for all the, you know, wouldn't say criticism, maybe just kind of critiques, Liverpool still were in that game to a large extent, and I kind of see why Guardiola calls them a pain in the backside, because City were far and away the better team in the first half, and for maybe the last 15-20 minutes of the second half as well. They've led by seemingly unassailable amounts at various points in the season, and yet Liverpool are still there, hanging on, clinging in. Still got to keep City honest for the remainder of the season. You can't take that out of anything in the Premier League, and you know, it's no surprise that they get on Guardiola's wick, because they just don't seem to be able to shake them off. So, as I say, just for Liverpool to be in this position for the next 7 games is enough at the moment, and they'll carry on. They've still got some tough games to come, haven't they? Tottenham at home, I think, is the big one that I'm particularly worried about, with their ability to counter-attack, and Liverpool's high line. That might just play into Conte's hands a little bit. City and Everton and United as well to come, you know, historic games where the teams coming to Anfield might just give a little bit extra 5%. But yeah, I think just to be in this position in heading into mid-April is just something that supporters have got to, you know, keep the enthusiasm up and remain excited and just see what happens, because you know, if they do fall short in the Premier League, they've still got, we'll see what happens, won't we, on Saturday in the FA Cup and the Champions League. You'd expect Liverpool to do the business on Wednesday night and move into the semi-finals. So still loads to play for, and it's just going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold, I think.
Yeah, I suppose it just underlines the nature of this Liverpool side, doesn't it? That don't always have to play at their best. I suppose typified by Diogo Jota himself, that don't always have to play their best, but do seem to just carry a goal at all times, including kind of within 50 seconds of the restart of the second half as well. That pass from Mohamed Salah, albeit not scoring, was absolutely sublime to set through Sadio Mane. But at times it looked as though City were beginning to get on top more and more and more. But when Liverpool go forward, you know quite often what the end result is.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point about Diogo Jota. He does epitomise that really. I've seen some ridiculous things going around on Twitter, little compilations of his terrible performance, and he needs to be benched and sold, and all these ridiculous things, despite scoring at the Etihad, and he's the second top scorer in the Premier League, and I think he's very much taken for granted. I think Luis Diaz has come in and he's the shiny new skillful winger, and everyone wants to see him play every game. But Jota can have maybe a less impactful performance, and maybe doesn't look so pleasing on the eye as maybe Firmino or Diaz can, but he pops up with these goals in crucial games, and Sadio Mane has as well. He's scored twice against City this season and popped up with big goals against Benfica, and many big goals in the Champions League this season as well. So I think all of Liverpool's forward line are able to do that, and the old adage is that the sign of champions is you can win games and get results when you're not playing well, and that's exactly what this Liverpool side are doing, and what they've learned to do in the last couple of years under Klopp. I think the season they won the league, they very much strolled to, it was a real canter to the league. In the end, City fell away, and Liverpool were on that incredible winning streak before COVID hit, and they won pretty much every game they played. And at that season, me and Gorsty were going to every game, and we'd come away saying we weren't even really, it could be 0-0 in the 86th minute, and you're still fully expecting a Liverpool win, because that's just what they were doing that season. And this year they're more grinding the results out. They're maybe not putting the 3-4-0s away that we did see earlier in the start of the season, when the games seemed to be a little bit more end to end, and they were scoring a lot of goals but maybe conceding the other end of the pitch. But really, since there was that little blip at Christmas where if they don't win a league, I think that will be the reason why. You look at the draws against Brighton, the defeat to Leicester, it won't be because they drew at the Etihad, it will be because of those results around Christmas, when if you let a lead get to 14 points, the fact that they're right back in it now is incredible testament to what they've done since. But you shouldn't, if you're in that position, you're never really expecting to be back in it. So I think those results around Christmas will be why they don't win it, if that is the case. But no, they've really developed that old kind of Manchester United mentality under Ferguson, just grinding the results out, and that's what champions do.
Yeah, I'll have to wait and see how it does play out. I want to pick up on the point Gorsty made before, though, Dan, in terms of kind of the fixture list, but equally countering the point I said about Guardiola and a compliment maybe that was paid to Liverpool, in the fact that actually did it expose that defensive line? I know you said before it was calculated risk, but is it one of those actually that the take home from this might be other sides look at that way in which City were able to get at Liverpool, and that may cause kind of reason for concern even moving forward now?
I think other sides will certainly look at it, but I don't necessarily believe it raises any significant cause for concern, because this isn't a new tactic Liverpool have suddenly been doing with the high line and the fullbacks pushing on. They've been playing this way for 2, 3, 4 years. So anyone that's cared to look and do the analysis would have identified this. Teams probably have tried to take advantage of it over the last couple of years, but they've been singularly, by and large, unable to, because the tactical discipline within the team is such that when the likes of Trent and Robbo are bombing forward, then the likes of Henderson or Keita or whoever's playing on that side of midfield, they know how to dovetail for each other and fill in. And, one of the people I watched the match a lot of the aways with, bless her, tends to get terrified every time the opposition get towards our box. But it's a football match. Both teams are going to create chances. For me, and I think this is something we've all touched on before in various pods over the last couple of seasons. Liverpool and Klopp have committed to a certain way of playing, and occasionally it's going to fall down. Occasionally it's not going to work. But I think it's safe to say over the last 4 or 5 years, it's proven pretty effective and pretty successful. And obviously, if it wasn't for Manchester City and the way they are, Liverpool would have even much more trophies and plaudits to show for it. So I think it's just one of those kind of things you've got to take on the chin. Against most opposition, Liverpool will always score more than they concede, and that's why they've been competing for the top honours consistently over the last 2 or 3 seasons. So I don't. It is possible. We know obviously that all football clubs, particularly Liverpool, play a great deal of store in analysis and data, and doing their homework on what they've seen, not just, after games, but even during games. So obviously, bearing in mind we play City again in another big match in the semi-final on Saturday, I would imagine that there'll be various brains at work over the course of the week to kind of basically to make sure that the first half on Sunday is not repeated on Saturday. I don't think there'll be any major problems with what happened after half time, but obviously what happened before half time was a problem. And on a different day and with more clinical finishing from City, they could have been 2 or 3 goals clear and it would be all over. So bearing in mind, obviously Saturday's a cup tie and there are no get out of jail cards. I would imagine the analysis will inform the tactics and the team for that. But I would be surprised if there's any significant alteration, because ultimately this is how Liverpool have played for 3 or 4 years. And ultimately, I think it's what we as supporters want to see. There's the culture of the modern manager now is for progressive, expansive football. We're not in the Mourinho, Benitez, Houllier, conservative defensive era. So for me, it's a price to pay that, all right, we might concede a few goals. We might have a few hair-raising moments. But firstly, week after week, we go to watch football and are royally entertained. And B, it's proven successful. Do you know what I mean? Whoever you might think are better out of Liverpool City at the moment, they're the best 2 teams in the world. So something's working. So I certainly wouldn't advocate any kind of drastic change in approach, possibly just a few minor tweaks here and there to hopefully eradicate the problems that we saw before the break on Sunday at the Etihad.
Yeah, no, definitely. Gorsty, what about then looking forward? And I think 3 of the remaining 7 games, unless I'm to be corrected, City's game against Wolves hasn't quite been rearranged yet. But of those that definitely have, 3 of Liverpool's 7 Premier League games fall before Man City play. How key do you think that could be of ramping up the pressure?
Yeah, but it won't hurt, will it? I mean, I think Liverpool spent far too long around the December time playing after City. So it was always just about maintaining, staying on the coattails and just about doing enough just to make sure that you can play again next week and you can do the same. So it won't hurt Liverpool to go first and just put a little bit of pressure back on City. And we might be talking about Liverpool going top of the Premier League for an hour or 2, every weekend, might be before City inevitably win and regain that advantage. But yeah, I think it's not a huge thing, but I think you'd rather play first knowing that, City haven't played earlier in the day and you've got to do the business to make sure that everything's still on the line. I think it's much easier to know that if you win, you go top and you pile the pressure back on to them for however long it is, a day, a couple of hours, whatever it is. But there's no doubt that Liverpool's running's a lot tougher. As I say, Tottenham, United, even Everton, to an extent, as disastrous a season has been the other side of Stanley Park. They always try and put in a little bit more when they come to Anfield, won't they? But yeah, like I say, you never expect City to drop points anyway, so it doesn't really matter in a weird way who they're playing. You've just got to hope that someone at some point puts in a hell of a shift and does enough, whether that's Newcastle or Wolves or whoever it is they've got to play. I'm not too sure who the remainder of the fixtures are. I did see it last night, but can't remember off the top of my head. I do remember thinking Liverpool's is a lot tougher. I know they've got to play Aston Villa, haven't they, the last day of the season, and there's a...
They played that great team Brighton, who picked up a really good win at the weekend. They played Watford and West Ham as well away from home.
Well, West Ham's probably the big one, isn't it? They're having a great season, and West Ham went out against City earlier in the season.
No, they drew in the EFL Cup and knocked them out of that. I was going to say, the mad thing that's been with Man City this season is every team they've dropped points against in the first round of fixtures is who they've since dropped points against, and they've kind of mirrored the result, apart from at Palace where they lost at home and drew away from home. So aside from that, Dan's nodding along. It kind of is risky ground, isn't it? Because they won all of the corresponding games they've still got to play in the first round of fixtures. And as I say, so far this season, it's kind of all married up a bit, but we'll have to wait and see if that does play. Dan, I'll bring you in there. You're on mute, Dan.
Yes, I saw a similar graphic on the way home yesterday, basically pointing out the fact that City have only dropped points in 8 games against 4 opposition. both fixtures, which some people kind of took as a negative, basically saying, well, all the teams they're likely to drop points to, they've already played again. But I looked at it from a slightly different perspective, along the lines of, well, you know, I think so. Well, two of them are Tottenham and Liverpool, who are obviously two of the better teams in the league. But the other two are Crystal Palace and Southampton, with respect to both those teams, are teams that you would not expect City to drop points to. And looking at the rest of their fixture list, apart from Watford, who seem to be gone, the likes of Newcastle, Villa, West Ham, Leeds, Brighton, I think they kind of fall into the same category as Southampton and Palace. So, yeah, of course, City are favourites to win it. Do you know what I mean? And this will be what, the fourth league in 5 years, fifth and sixth? You know, they're an outstanding team that are used to dominating, but they have already shown this season that they are capable of slip up some games when you would least expect. And as I've been banging on about all season, we're now getting to the time of the year when the Champions League becomes a factor again. And there is enormous pressure on them as a club, as a manager, as a squad to win that, you know, to deliver. That's what all the money's been spent for. That's what all these managers and players have been brought in for. And maybe I'm clutching at straws. You know, I've been going on about it all season when they've had this league, but we are now getting to the business end. And as Guardiola, you know, as I've seen quotes from him this morning, basically saying the real value of Liverpool's result yesterday is the fact that they know they have to win every single match. One slip could mean they don't win the league. So there's still that jeopardy there for them. I agree with Gorst. You know, on paper, our fixtures, you know, do look a bit tougher. But I just think you get to this stage of the season with the stakes so high for both these outstanding teams, there's no easy games. And all it takes is one moment of magic, one crazy error, one, you know, like I was just saying before about Ederson's incredibly calm, relaxed, taking an extra beat, almost letting the ball go half over the line before. But one tiny misjudgment like that could change everything. And that's what Liverpool have to just keep believing in.
Just to jump in on Dan's point there as well with regards to the teams that City have dropped points against. I think I saw a stat maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago now, so things may have skewed slightly since, but at the time City were top of the head-to-head league of the top sides, if you like, the kind of top 4 or 5, but they were actually bottom of the league head-to-head league of that next bracket of teams. So the kind of 5th to 6th down to 9th, 10th, they were bottom of that head-to-head league. So all the draws and drop points that they've had have been against those kind of teams, that next bracket down, and as Dan says, they've still got Wolves and Villa and that kind of team left to play. So whereas as Liverpool have got the maybe bigger teams on paper, City are coming up against some of the sides that so far this season they've certainly struggled against, and 2 of Liverpool's tougher games are Man United and Everton, which, as Gorsty said, traditionally are massive games, and you know, ones that you kind of look for on day one when the fixtures come out. But Gary Neville made the point on Sky Sports yesterday. This is a Man United team that's, what are they, 7th at the moment? Nowhere near, you know, the force they were going. You'd have to go back a few years now to get to the kind of scale of Liverpool, Man United of old. I don't think it's going to be that kind of game. And Everton, you know, their season's been well documented. They're just looking like, you know, they might stay up now 4 points above relegation, kind of head above water. But if you play the game on the day rather than the team and the fixture, as we know Klopp does, we've seen over the years he's been at Liverpool, he's really played down the pre-match press conferences when he's coming up to Everton. He said before, well, it's just second against 12th. It's not this big Merseyside derby that we like to build it up as. For him, it's just another game, and I've got no doubt that will be his approach going into those 2 big games as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you look at City's fixture list they're running. I mean, West Ham, depending on how they go in the Europa League, every man in that squad will be wanting to play in what could be a Europa League final for them if they continue to go strongly in Europe. Aston Villa, of course, we know what Steven Gerrard's going to want to do to help Liverpool's title ambitions in any which way he can as well. I mean, it was the great Johan Cruyff who said football's a game of the fewest errors, didn't he? And it feels as though these head-to-heads against City are certainly that, but also the title race will be determined very similarly. So we will have to wait and see how it plays out. But Gorsty, on to Benfica, obviously leading 3-1 from the last leg, last week out in Lisbon against the Portuguese side. I mean, effectively, the job's done. It's just about seeing it through now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I thought Benfica had that kind of big leveler of the atmosphere than as Liverpool have used to their advantage when they've been the underdog in recent, well, going back 15 years or so to the kind of Chelsea-Liverpool era. But Liverpool handled that superbly. I thought it was very, very loud at the Stadio Delusion, and the home fans, particularly when Darwin Núñez scored to make it 2-1. They were very, very loud. But I thought Liverpool for 75, 80 minutes of that game handled it superbly. They were the superior side and didn't let the atmosphere or anything else kind of knock them out of the stride, except for kind of a slight miscue from Ibrahim Konate, who was otherwise excellent. So, 3-1 at Anfield, I don't envision too many problems on the night. The key question, I suppose, is whether Klopp rests key names or whether he thinks try and get the tie done as early as possible and then make full use of those 5 subs. I suppose that's the big thing he's got to wrestle with. But I think if he played a team that was be more akin to a domestic cup tie, I still think Liverpool will have more than enough to get by Benfica and make sure that they are in the semi-finals. So it went really well in Lisbon. And on the flip side of that, City have got to go to Atletico Madrid, who, whether City are going to win, lose or draw that game, and I still expect them to come through it. It's not going to be easy. Whatever happens, they're not going to go there and win 4-0 and be comfortable. It's going to be a scrap and a battle and a tense one. And ultimately, that could perhaps be a key deciding factor for the FA Cup semi-final on Saturday. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in Friday's pod. But that's worked out quite well for Liverpool, and I expect them to go through fairly comfortably on Wednesday night into a third European Cup final of Jurgen Klopp's reign.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Kai, yourself, in terms of looking at the title race, Premier League title race, and you said they're getting a point at the Etihad, then it's game on. It's still all to play for. I mean, now we've got 9-10 days of the Premier League kind of taking a back seat, and these next 2 games, crucially, are ones in which Jurgen Klopp can change half the outfield team as well. It feels as though whilst again it's another huge week and the stakes just rise even more, it kind of feels as though it's come at a good time off the back of that City game to have this week of these cup games before then going again in the midweek.
Yeah, and this is the good thing about this time of the season when you do go deep into all competitions. You've got the variety. One day you're playing a title decider at the Etihad, and then 3 days later you're a second leg of a Champions League quarter final. End of the week you're in an FA Cup semi-final. So it's lots of opportunities for all the squad. Liverpool have got probably the greatest squad that they've had certainly in my lifetime, and in this Klopp reign, everything that they've done in his time here so far, they've really only had possibly an 11, maybe 1 or 2 off the bench. I think this is the first time they've had a squad where any of the front 5 you can interchange without much of a drop in quality at all, and numerous midfield options, and that kind of goes all through the team really. It's going to be a great chance, I think, certainly the second leg against Benfica for some of these players. I know we'll come on to the team, but you've got people like Minamino, Origi now, who obviously their futures are uncertain in the summer, but they're not even making the bench for some of these big Premier League games, and they are better than that. They warrant a decent. They could easily move to a really good Premier League team and be kind of in and around the squad. We've seen Divock Origi linked with the likes of AC Milan, who are Champions League team. So for them not to be making the bench, this is going to be their opportunity to, whether they come in from the start, I think you might be looking at maybe one of them coming in, and then the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita. We've still got Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, all these great players who aren't really getting a look in at all at the moment. I think, it's time to ring the changes for Benfica, and then Saturday I think it will be more into the sort of 11 that we saw play at the Etihad, almost a full strength team.
Yeah, definitely, Dan. It feels as though it is that stage of the season where legends are born. I mean, obviously, we only have to go back a few years for Divock Origi and what he did in the semi-finals of the Champions League away at Newcastle, and obviously in the final as well. But it is that kind of time, isn't it, where those in the squad who sometimes aren't always the most fancied come to the fore.
Absolutely, and someone who actually came into my mind, just idle thoughts over the last couple of days, actually really for watching some of the previous big matches we've had against City in recent years, was Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who's had, you know, such a frustrating hit and miss time at Liverpool, with rotten luck really, with, you know, injuries coming at such inopportune moments for him. Like you say, these crucial final business ends of season, often, if you look through history, there's quite frequently some unexpected character who pops up with a crucial goal, a crucial assist here and there. And, you know, I think, you know, a lot of people have discussed that, you know, this could end up being his final season at Anfield. I think he's out of contract end of next year, but he's obviously been at the club 4 or 5 years and has yet to really cement a regular place in the side for himself. But everything we've always heard is he's a very popular, well-liked. And even this season, he's popped up with some important goals, important moments this season. Big goal at Crystal Palace early in January, I seem to remember. A great ball in for Mane, I think, in the home win over Brighton. And, you know, as Kai said, with the games coming thick and fast, I mean, at the moment, touch wood, Liverpool got basically a clean bill of health. But that's unlikely to remain the case, I would suggest, over the next 5 to 6 weeks. Inevitably, injuries will be picked up, and also there's the vagaries of form. I mean, you know, I agree with Kai. I think we won't see an FA Cup team on Wednesday, but Klopp will certainly utilise the squad as well he should, because not just in terms of injuries, the entire Klopp era has been exemplified by big performances, big moments happening from clever use of the bench during matches. And Klopp wants to make sure that whoever he wants to turn to with 75, 85, who knows, it could be 105 minutes gone on if we go to extra time at Wembley on Sunday, which you have to say at this moment seems highly likely. You want to make sure that whoever he turns to off the bench has some modicum of form, some modicum of fitness, some minutes in the legs to do it. But yeah, I would, you know, whatever his future is at Liverpool, I'd love to see Oxlade-Chamberlain, you know, just show what he's capable of, and maybe kind of have a little bit of redemption from some of the near misses he's had earlier in his Liverpool career. And I think we've all said there's just this feeling in our bones, Divock Origi, if he is off to AC Milan in the summer or not, surely he's got one big moment left in him, and, you know, no one would be surprised if he pulled yet another rabbit out of the hat.
Yeah, no, I saw that doing the rounds on social media last week, that when is Divock time? Because it does feel as though there is still a moment.
There was one at Wolves, wasn't there, early in the season, but that's been it this season, really. So
yeah, no, most definitely. But Gorstin, we'll get into picking our team, but just in terms of how Jurgen Klopp manages this squad, yes, he's got a fully fit squad, but the logistics of how whether it's a watered down side that takes on Benfica and then goes stronger for an FA Cup semi-final, but then straight off the back of that, it's midweek against Manchester United and Everton to come the following weekend. I mean, there really isn't sort of time to pick and choose where and when you rest players, is there?
There isn't, no. And I made a similar point last week with regards to specifically Mohamed Salah. Obviously, he was a little bit out of form. I thought yesterday he played quite well at times, and his assist was superb, but he hasn't scored since mid-February, has he? And there's been some talk over whether he could use a little bit of a rest. I think he's played now over 2,000 minutes in 2022, which is unbelievable, really, when you think about it, for club and country. And I think with regard to him, I think this is an ideal opportunity for him just to sit this one out and rest up and you know, safe in the knowledge that he'll be starting at Wembley on Saturday. I think potentially someone like Trent as well could benefit from this one, and maybe even Andy Robertson. Still think you know, he'll go with Van Dijk at the back and maybe one of Henderson or Fabinho. But generally, it's a really good chance to just to give some rest, get some rest into the legs, because, as you say, Guy, they haven't really got too many opportunities to do that between now and the end of the season. And you know, I suppose it's just about making it easier for themselves with a healthy first lead from the first leg in Portugal. Gives them the opportunity to do that for the second leg, and looking around, you know, there's not too many other chances for them to do that because.
Yeah, I mean, you said, but then it just kind of dropped into my head that the Merseyside home derby midweek in the 1920 season on the way to winning the league, he made what, seven changes that night. Now, I'm not saying for Merseyside derby this time out, but maybe the United game you might look at and go, actually, I'll go weaker against Benfica, stronger for the Cup semi-final. Dan said before, obviously 2 draws with City this year, that could well go to extra time. Might be the United game, the form they're in, that looks at and goes, as Kai said before, don't play the name on the fixture list, play the team that's in front of you. Do Liverpool need to be at full strength?
Yeah, I think he'll definitely do it for Everton, because I think, you know, Klopp's never been interested in Everton. You know, the name and the badge and what it all stands for. They are just the team who are, whenever they are in the league, whenever Liverpool play them. And at the moment, you look at it and thinking they're hovering around relegation. They've been awful all season, but at home, it's, you know, set up for the chance to rest and rotate. And the good news is now for Liverpool on that front is they've got the squad to be able to do that, haven't they? You know, a couple of years ago, you were looking at it and thinking, well, if you try that, you it's a really big risk. But, you know, they've got 5 going into 3 in terms of the front 3, haven't they? And then whatever combination you choose in midfield is normally going to be solid enough. And then as long as you're kind of picking one, to be fair, you can pick any of the 4 centre-backs and you're probably going to get, you know, a solid spine to the team. But as long as you're picking one of Van Dijk and or Matip, you'd expect Liverpool to still be able to do the business against teams who are further down the league. So, yeah, it's just nice to have the options, isn't it? Because injury problems and whatever else, Liverpool haven't always had the chance to do that. But I think the winter break was key for that. I think it got give Liverpool a chance to get some key men fit. Keita, I think, and Thiago and Harvey Elliott and Diaz joined around that time, and suddenly you were looking at it thinking, what an incredible squad this is. And I think when you're going for everything, you're going to have to use the full remit of it. So I think we'll see plenty of changes in the next week or 2 across all the games.
Yeah, most definitely. Right, let's get into picking our team then for the game with Benfica. I'm going to say Alisson's going to be in goal. Kai, you can lead us on the back 4. What are you thinking?
Yeah, agree with that with Alisson in goal. I am going to make wholesale changes to the back 4, probably barring, I'll leave Matip in, because I think Gorsty's point actually it hadn't really occurred to me. But if you're going to rest Van Dijk, this is probably the last game in the season where you might be able to do that. From here on in, excuse me, from here on in, you're looking at FA Cup semi-finals, and you know every game is a final in the league essentially. So I think this is the last opportunity to maybe rest Van Dijk. So I'll go with Milner at right back, give Trent a rest. I think the same applies to him. And then Matip and... No, do you know what? I'll rest Matip as well. I'm going to go Konate and Gomez, centre-back. Gomez had a good game at right back when he came in. Got that great assist for Jotter last week, but give him a run in his preferred position, centre-back with Konate, and then Tsimikas in for Robertson, left-back.
Dan, what are you thinking? You're going to change the full-back 4? What about the goalkeeper as well?
No, certainly wouldn't change the goalkeeper. I would be inclined to definitely give Trent and Robert a rest at full-back, and Tsimikas in. I'd be maybe more inclined to have Gomez again at right back, because I think potentially he's the next cab off the rank in that position. Should Trent get an injury, and I think it's good for him to be, you know, get his rhythm there. And yeah, 2 from 3 at centre back. I can see the benefit in giving Van Dijk a rest. He did look, you know, I think that was one of the shocking things about the first half yesterday. You're so unused to seeing him look flustered like that. So maybe
a couple of times as well.
Well, and he showed in the second half when, you know, he motored through the gears and took that one off Sterling, like taking candy off a baby. That, you know, he's still big Virgil at the back. But yeah, at the I wouldn't necessarily be inclined to give him a rest. I think I'd play him and Konate.
Nice one.
Yeah, I think I'd do the same, actually. I think Gomez has kind of nudged ahead of the pack now, hasn't he, in terms of being the other right back. Milner had to go there. Conor Bradley's played there. Nico Williams has gone out on loan. But I think Gomez did a decent impression of Trent, if we're honest, against Watford recently. So I'd put him at right back. I'd have Tsimikas on the left, and I'd bring in Konate, and I'd keep Van Dijk in there, because 9 times out of 10, he barely breaks a sweat anyway, does he? So I don't think there's going to be too many issues of overusing Van Dijk. So that'd be my back five.
Right, cool. Dan, midfield three.
Well, I'd give Naby Keita a game. I think that he probably can't have been too far away from getting a start yesterday. He's been in really good form lately. He was outstanding in the first leg. Fabinho didn't have his greatest game at City, did he? He improved a bit second half. He looked a bit off it. And just thinking then we were talking about Van Dijk, and obviously we've all mentioned about fatigue and all these matches left, right and centre. It's not just physical fatigue; it's mental fatigue. It's the intensity that these lads put themselves under day after day, week after week. They're knowing what all these matches mean. So I think it's important that that's kind of taken into account as well. So I'd probably maybe give Fabinho a rest. Henderson, Keita, and Curtis Jones for me.
Right, okay. Gorsty, come to you on that midfield three.
Yeah, just as Dan was talking, I was weighing it up myself. Just to be a little bit contrarian, I'd put Fabinho in instead of Henderson, but certainly Keita, and I think you can make a case for Jones as well.
Are you in agreement with Gorsty or Dan, or are you ripping that up as well?
I'm going with Jordan Henderson. He's not had too many 90 minutes, has he, in the last few days. I think he was came off against City and was he benched the game before that, Benfica, I think. So
yeah.
So I think he could probably do with a start and maybe a 90 here. And then Naby Keita was brilliant against Benfica and unlucky to be dropped yesterday, so he comes back in. It's a choice. If you've got so many options there. Harvey Elliott could come in. Oxlade-Chamberlain, as Dan said earlier, hasn't had much game time at all. I'll go with Curtis Jones as well. I think so. Jones, Keita, Henderson.
Actually, I've changed my mind. I want Chamberlain instead of Jones. I forgot about him. I can't big him up and then ignore him for this Benfica game, can I?
Dan, it's over to you next anyway. You can crowbar him into your front three if you want, or is it Divock time?
Well, I mean, the front three is interesting. I talked to chatting on the way down yesterday, and if yesterday's front three was picked on form, Mo Salah wouldn't have been in it. And it didn't think he was great at half time, but in the first half, but he showed his mettle. He showed what a big game player is. He proved Klopp's decision correct, really, with that sublime assist for Mane, which obviously was a huge moment in the match. If Liverpool, even if that had stayed 2-1 for 10 minutes into the second half, could have been a totally different game. But he's obviously not at his best. He hasn't scored an open play since February, is it? So I'd definitely give Mo a rest, night off, put your feet up, watch Corrie and whatever. Diaz comes back in. We're playing a weaker team, but I wouldn't go too light up top because obviously the key to this is getting the game won, and hopefully a couple of early goals will just hopefully enable them to manage the game and manage legs in advance of Saturday. So up front, I'm going Diaz, Mane, who I thought was magnificent yesterday, the best player on the pitch, a magnificent career he's had for Liverpool, but I think that was one of his best ever performances. His touch, his hold-up play, his strength, his aggression, obviously a superb finish. He seems bang in form, so I'd actually start him, hopefully get himself a couple of goals early on, and then get wrapped up on the bench. Diaz, Mane, and Jotter.
Okay, Gorsty.
See, I'm not too sure. I just think Jota's utterly redundant now if he's not down the middle. But you can't put Firmino in one of them wide areas either. So I'd have Salah on the bench, but I'm not completely giving them the night off. Just a bit of an insurance policy. So I don't know. I might have to go Mane down the right, Diaz on the left, and Firmino through the middle. Not ideal for Mane, but
could Diaz not play on the right though? Because he has been very interchangeable. I know he came in with the hype of being an out-and-out left-sided, right-footed player.
I mean, I suppose he could, but he hasn't played there once, has he? Since he's been at Liverpool, at least Mane played there in his first season before Salah signed. So it's not ideal, but I think he's probably the best of the rest outside of obviously Salah playing on the right.
Okay, Kai, what about yourself?
Yeah, Salah's at home with his feet up, Coronation Box Street, box set on. So Box Street. I'd have Mane on the bench again, just give him a rest, but there for that insurance policy, like Gorsty said, I think have him in the squad if you need him. 5 subs, of course, as well, so lots of opportunities to change even at half time if the game's won. So Firmino down the middle, Diaz on the left, and I will bring Minamino in from the cold, I think, just to rest some of our legs for this big 6 weeks we got coming up.
Do you not go with Bobby Firmino, no?
Firmino down the middle, yeah.
I thought you said Minamino.
Minamino right, Firmino middle, Diaz left.
Right, there we go. Right, fair play. We got there in the end. Right, what about the result then? Go Gorsty, Dan, and then Kai, you finish off.
I think it might just be a nice and routine 2-0 early goal, and then at some point in the second half.
Dan?
3-1 Liverpool.
Kai?
Repeat of the first leg.
2-0 Liverpool.
2-0. Right, we'll have to wait and see how it does play out. Of course, there will be plenty of build-up coverage and reaction across the Liverpool Echo website. As to, will there be across the Blood Red channel as well as across our podcast feed as well, with the post-game podcast coming after the game. But for myself, Guy Clarke, Kai Delaney, Dan Kay and Paul Gorst, thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.